Hello. Yes, it's two dudes and one pint, and we still haven't got a logo because we've had incredibly busy weeks. Unfortunately, Mr. Nick Rowland has been a little bit ill. I've been a little bit busy, so this episode that we should have done on Monday is actually taking place on Sunday, which is rather useful, Nick.
Yeah, it's just 1 week later, and at least I'm starting to feel a little bit better, and I can actually talk now, so that's always good, even if I am talking through my nose, but encouraging signs nonetheless, no longer on my deathbed.
Indeed so. We have got a lot to talk about. Silly season in IndyCar has really hit full gear. Silly season in Formula 1, well, that's just imploded. We've got the Japanese Grand Prix to talk about. We've got week 5 of the NFL to talk about. And little bits and pieces here and there, so we'll get on with it. And one of the things that we do need to do before we go any further, Nick, is we're not going to go into too much speculation of this, that, and the other, but Jules Bianchi, of course, had what does seem to be a very bad crash at Suzuka. And, of course, we just wish all the very best to him and hope that he has an incredibly speedy recovery.
Yeah, I mean, all we've really... I've seen absolutely no coverage of it. Sky were pretty firm set on showing no replays, which is, natural and pretty obvious. I've only seen images of it, but of the images I have seen, and more seem to have come out throughout the days gone on, it looks a hefty old incident. There's one in particular picture where it actually looks like part of his helmet is actually crushed on the side of his head, or at least compressed, I should say. But I don't know how it's actually happened, and at that particular moment. But it's such a freak-looking accident.
It is, and so one of the things that I immediately started thinking about, because they were talking about a JCB there, I was thinking back to, of course, the crash that Maria de Volta had back in testing in Spain. But we'll talk more about the Japanese Grand Prix. I think it's a natural place to start. And again, Jules, we hope and wish that you have a full and speedy recovery as far as your incident goes. But it's been one of those races this weekend where on track has been just really only about 40% of the entire thing. Of course, we had the announcement that Sebastian Vettel was leaving Red Bull to go to Ferrari, which I remember back in Italy, just before Italy and Singapore as well, I was saying to you that, all of the sources from Italy were hinting at Sebastian Vettel going to Ferrari. What I always expected was it to be a straight swap with Alonso going to Red Bull. It turns out that that's not going to happen, but Kvyat's going to Red Bull.
Yes, it seems as though there's been a whole... Well, apparently there's a pattern that will eventually play out, but it's not being seen at the moment, so we're basically left to pure speculation. Now, majority of this weekend was thoughts of being Alonso's announcement, likely going to McLaren under Honda power, and have gone supposedly turning up in Japan on Monday earlier in the week to go to the Honda factory, none of which was confirmed. But then to the revelation prior to qualifying that Sebastian Vettel is leaving Red Bull. Now, there's no confirmation once again that he is actually going to Ferrari. It's just been said that he is going to Ferrari.
Yeah.
But so a very good friend of mine and a good source, apparently there was an interview with Helmut Marko, and the certain words and apparently the wording he was using was more referring to the fact that Vettel was actually fired rather than left.
Wow.
I don't know how much truth is in that, but there is a very strong speculation that actually Vettel was just basically fired rather than him saying, I don't want to be here anymore, and he has a stipulation in his contract that does allow him to go.
Yeah, so we've known about that stipulation for ages. And you'd almost think that was one-sided.
It's a very strange, very strange set of circumstances to occur. But at the moment, I would personally say that Alonso is actually heading more so towards a sabbatical.
Yes, because, well, there's a number of issues as far as the McLaren thing would go. You've got Jenson Button. I mean, yes, he is at the back end of his F1 career. He has got a maximum of 2 years left. We know that one. But you've also got Magnussen in that. And he does need a teammate, not someone who's just going to dominate him. That's an important factor as far as that one goes. And I think that when you put all of these things together, it does look more and more as though Alonso is going to take a lot of work for him to end up back in McLaren. And of course, Ron Dennis, he's one of those very big factors. But arguably, you've got another big factor there, which is Honda. And if Honda don't want Fernando Alonso, then Fernando Alonso's not going to McLaren.
Well, no, I don't know. I just can't see it. I can't see how Alonso is going to go to McLaren. I've wrote about it earlier in the week. My thoughts on the Alonso situation. I put a blog out there about it, and this is my personal standpoint on it. I don't understand how Alonso can go back to a team that he essentially had such bad blood with. Now, it's been quite well documented, especially in recent times, how Hamilton and Alonso they seem to be okay with each other. The issue seems to be with Ron Dennis and McLaren itself between Alonso.
Yes.
Therefore, I don't see how that would work. Also, there is a very strong pragmatic approach from McLaren, and Alonso drives a lot with heart and that very Latin style of driver. And that again, that's a big shift and a big bounce. I do not think that would work either. I don't think that is something that would work in a team. Arguably, they were able to do it with Senna, but it backfired also. Alain Prost, you could say the French are, they have that sort of Latin blood to them, but Alain Prost was also very pragmatic. It worked with McLaren. I don't see that balance there. Either he stays at Ferrari, or he takes a sabbatical. There is that outside shout that apparently he's going to invest in Lotus, but I don't really see that at the moment.
Yes, and again, that would be in some ways a homecoming of sorts, because he won his 2 championships at the team which is now known as Lotus. Of course, that was back in the Briatore days. So you've got.
But he still has Flav backing him now, though, doesn't he?
Yes.
He still works quite closely with Flav.
He does, but it's that whole thing is, would Lotus want to again be associated in such close proximity with Flav after? I mean, let's be honest, that whole Singapore gate from a couple of years ago, it essentially destroyed that team because they have been financially unstable ever since that point.
They have. Even though most people would call them Team Endstone, because that's exactly what they are. It's never really gone right. It hasn't. It's been kind of downhill for them. They had that upshot last season where Grosjean was driving the bulls off the thing, but that's been about it.
Well, yeah, and of course this year they have had the issues that they probably have got a discount on mass producing front wings on that car now, but the amount of front wings they've had to replace this year, the amount of suspension pieces they've had to replace this year, been a little bit difficult for Lotus with good old Pastor Maldonado. And you'd argue Maldonado to go, but then you remember the fact that he's the one bringing in so much money into that team. So that's it. Unfortunately,
it's about 25
everything.
25 million from PDVSA, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or PDVSA, whatever they decide to call it these days. He seems to be the one bringing in the money. So he's going to go nowhere. But Silly season seems to be quite strife at the moment, not just with the Alonso situation. There seems to be, like you said, all these other drivers, including Button, Magnussen, Grosjean, Hulkenberg,
it's
John
the most
Verne.
Uncertain of all of the off seasons in a long time. The only thing that we do know is that we're not going to get Simona.
We're not going to get Simona, no. But if you notice, this Silly season essentially started a year early.
Yes.
Everyone thought it would happen at the end of 2015, ready for 16, but it's actually come a season early. No, we're not going to get Simona, and I think that is a big shame for the sport and for her. I think she's a tremendous talent, and Sauber may have missed a trick there, and Formula 1 may have missed a trick there, but, money does drive things, and clearly she's not producing the money, and I suspect Guido van der Garde is.
Yes, and there's so much politics, I think, involved in that whole Sauber thing, which isn't fully of Sauber's doing as a team, isn't fully of Simona's doing as a team, with sales and this and ownership. If I was Gene Haas, I would bear Simona in mind for 2016. I think that's the simplest point. And you've got the connections of sorts with Haas to Simona. I mean, all he needs to do is pick up the phone and talk to anyone in IndyCar, and you should get an amazing resume. But you are right, this is a year early. And we expected Vettel to at least do one more year at Red Bull, which then comes back down to, well, who is it? Was it Red Bull? Was it Vettel? Was it a combination of the two? Are we going to get some really big breaking news in the next week or so as to what the issue is? But it's a tough one, and of course, in amongst all of this, we have forgotten the fact that there was a race that went on this weekend, and it was just a little bit crazy.
Yeah, I don't really understand how this is all going to play out at the moment, because team-wise, you just don't know, you just don't see where anyone's really going. I mean, there's still this talk that Hamilton technically has not signed a contract extension from next year onwards as well. So does Alonso take a sabbatical and join Mercedes in 2016, with Hamilton probably going back to McLaren, you would have thought?
Mm-hmm.
You know, there is that upshot of possibly going to Ferrari. I just don't see that happening, though.
Because you don't completely destroyed. I mean, that could actually work in some ways, though. You figure out how there's been so many issues in Ferrari. They have done so many personnel changes. Why not get rid of? I say get rid of. Why not find a way of allowing Kimi Raikkonen to go and sit on a boat and drink vodka again, and actually start completely from scratch, the same way that they did in '96 with Irvine and Schumacher.
Yeah, that's not a bad shout, but I think just for consistency, to keep Raikkonen there for next year, and then probably, I suspect Raikkonen will retire at the end of next year. I think that will be it for Raikkonen at the end of next year. So you've got to believe that there's going to be a Ferrari seat open. But then, you know, who does take the Ferrari seat? You know, is Vettel going to Ferrari? We don't know that yet. Do they need to create a stopgap for a season? Well, in not so many disrespectful words, but, you know, Bianchi would have been ideal for that, really.
Well, yeah.
He may still be ideal for that. We just don't know at this point in time. But, you know, the silly season is absolutely strife. All that we do know is that Danny Rick and Danny Kvyat will be in the Red Bull for next season.
Which is going to be good in itself, because, I mean, we have to give all of the credit in the world to Ricciardo, because he has just driven the wheels off of a car which has been down on power all season. He's just found a way to make it work, and I think that, especially as we know that Red Bull the last 5 years has been Seb's town, take a car that's not designed for you in any way, shape or form, and beat the guy whose name is probably... You know, Vettel's probably had some form of secret affair, seeing as he names all of his cars after women, probably having a secret affair with Ricciardo's car along the side anyway, but Ricciardo's just dominated him this season.
He has, and even today, while the track positions don't really reflect what it was like, Danny Rick, most of the race, was faster than Vettel, even though he fell behind him after the first pit stops. Not only that, he was catching him prior to the red flag and had better tyres. Not only that, he actually made those tyres last, those inters last, longer than Vettel did.
Yeah.
By what? 5 laps? 6 laps?
At least, yeah. And, of course, when you get into a wet race... Yeah, once you get into those type of races, the wet races, it is much about luck as anything else. When it comes down to red flags, halfway through a stint and all of that stuff. But there's one thing that wasn't.
You don't drive around the outside of someone at Dunlop for fun, do you?
No.
I mean, that was impressive.
That was impressive. And I was going to say, move of the race. In fact, top 3 move of the season easily has got to be Lewis Hamilton.
For
passing Nico Rosberg for the race lead. I know it's 6 o'clock in the morning, but still, on the outside of turn number 1. It was okay. You've got to put it into perspective. When you make an overtake, you can make a really good overtake over a Caterham if you're battling for position, because they're so much slower. You've got the spray. It's a battle for the race lead. You'd had an incident at that corner just 2 laps ago. Rosberg gets a wiggle out of the triangle. You're working yourself to turn 1, and Rosberg goes defensive. You go to the outside of one of the scariest corners in Formula 1 and make it stick.
See, no, I don't necessarily agree with that, because in theory, Hamilton's actually on the racing line.
Is he though? In the wet?
Yeah, he is. because if you think about the way that Rosberg's car is positioned, firstly, he is on the dirty part of the track and the more wet part of the track and the one that's splashing more puddles.
Right.
That is actually out of the way of Hamilton and slowing Rosberg's car down. Then when he sweeps into turn one, the outside of turn one is dirty.
Yes.
Well, he's followed the racing line through the mid part of the corner,
Right.
then gone onto the dirty part. So technically speaking, he's actually picking up more grip.
But
So I don't actually, it's while people say, "Oh, it was an amazing move around the outside." Partly Rosberg gave it to him,
yes,
because he was, he should have been. He didn't need to be that defensive. In fact, he just didn't. And Hamilton basically just followed the contours of the corner because it's cambered inwards. So it's no different from what Raikkonen did to Fisichella at faster speeds in 2005 on the final lap.
What the point is, though, you made it. Why did Rosberg go so defensively? And again, it's pure panic. Rosberg,
yes,
and I say the same about Vettel. I think I have got to put Rosberg into this category. He is a great driver. He's not a great racer. He's a good racer.
No,
but he's not a great racer.
I agree with that. When it comes to the actual combat and the actual battling on track, I don't rate Rosberg that highly. He, well, I think that's a great word for it that you used before, panic.
Yeah.
He panics in situations, whereas Hamilton's a lot cooler, and I think actually being more aggressive makes him cooler because he knows what he needs to do for it. Whereas you've got other drivers out there like Danny Rick and Bottas who are making some phenomenal passes. John McVerne, in fact, in Singapore, they were some great passes as well. Very, very decisive. And that's what I think Rosberg lacks. I don't think he's a decisive driver.
No. Sorry. And for Rosberg, it's setting up that pass, which I think he struggled at a lot this season. In the same way that Vettel's done. Yeah, Bahrain is a perfect example. And, yes, you might have half a gap, but actually, if you even drop back a little bit, get yourself a bit cleaner, and set that pass up from conclusion of Sector 2, work it through Sector 3, get a good run out that final corner, then run to make that pass, rather than just thinking, there's a little bit of a gap here, I might go for it. That racecraft, I do think, has been lacking in a couple of drivers. Vettel, he's gotten better at it, and he has made some good passes this season. But Rosberg, I think he's always struggled at it because of the type of car he's been in. When he first started, that Mercedes wasn't great, but he didn't really have anyone to really race with then either.
No. Whenever we've seen anything throughout the season, it's always been Hamilton making the more impressive moves and doing the more impressive things, and probably more so being on the back foot. And I'm not a Hamilton fan, at all. Not even one bit a Hamilton fan. And I've wanted Rosberg pretty much all season to win based off principle, and probably more so me being a dick as well. But at this point, you can't really put it past Hamilton and winning the title. He bloody well deserves it. It's getting to that point anyway.
I agree. It is getting to that point that for Hamilton, he's had his tough part of the season. He's had to deal with a lot. And now he's opening up a gap in the championship. And in fact, he was very lucky that race did actually go beyond 75%, so he can get full points, because that's a little bit more. And now I think the second that he said that the championship's almost impossible for him to win, I think he said that to get it out of his system.
Yeah, he certainly after the mid-season break in particular, and sort of that sort of Belgium sort of time, even he seems to have come back invigorated. He seems to have just got this world of self-belief and this confidence. And Rosberg really took a big hit mentally in Singapore, but dusted himself off for Japan, and he seems back into a better frame of mind. And Rosberg showed that in qualifying. Hamilton showed it in the race. So I think these final four races will be a very, very tight battle between the pair of them. And quite honestly, at this point in time, in this how it stands, I think it's likely that Hamilton's going to prevail.
Now, let's have a look a little bit further back in the field and look at that battle with the two Red Bulls, because it. So you have to go back to the entire racing picture, and again, yes, Vettel won the battle. In that he finished on top, and after they reverted it back one lap, which Eddie Jordan, of course, knows that rule off by heart after 2003 Sao Paulo. Um, he did, yeah, finish above his teammate, but that doesn't mean that he'd beaten his teammate psychologically, if that makes sense.
He won the battle, but he's definitely not winning the war. Put it like that. He
Yes.
is. Other than the pit stop, where that extra lap on the full wets was probably the way to go. Every other point, Danny Rick was quicker. He was catching him. He got by the Williams just as quick as actually about half a lap later, and he probably more impressive way to get by him as well is what Danny Rick did. He was quicker. He was catching him. He made the tyres last longer, significantly longer. And when he did come out, he was the quickest guy on track, catching Vettel. It was something like 8 seconds down to about 3.5 before the red flag, and he would have probably passed him. Other than track position, after the very first round of stops, where Vettel stayed at 1 lap longer on the full wets, got to say Danny Rick was just superior there today over Vettel, and considering looking at next year as well, with the Red Bull being confirmed as Ricciardo and Kvyat, and currently speaking, the Mercedes is Nico Rosberg. Lewis Hamilton is likely to be there. We don't fully know that one though, because I think that could still move. Pastor Maldonado likely to stay at Lotus, and Massa and Bottas confirmed that Williams is definite. Max Verstappen in at Toro Rosso. That just goes to show how many seats are open. And Kimi will probably keep that Ferrari seat. I think that's pretty much done. But look at all those other seats that are open now.
There's a lot of them.
There's a hell of a lot of seats. I read a rumour on Saturday that Nico Hülkenberg was apparently going to the World Endurance Championship.
Yes, and I mean Hülkenberg, he's had the weirdest career of everyone, I think, in F1 out of the top 10 finishes from this weekend.
It's bizarre with Hülkenberg because everyone outside of Formula One thinks he's amazing. But I remember Martin Brundle said about it towards the end of last season. He says if you talk to team managers about Nico Hülkenberg, they're not that impressed by him.
No.
And I find that staggering. What is it about Nico Hülkenberg that is bad? Is it his height? Is it his weight? Is it his mentality? Is it his personality? But something clearly does not click. And apparently it steers all the top teams away from him.
Which is one of those things, though, that we don't necessarily know because we're not there in
we don't see it. We do not see it. And for me, Hülkenberg is one of the best young drivers out there.
Yes.
Deserves a top seat. And I don't think he will get it. And I think it would appear he's on his way.
Well, yeah, and there is so much that we don't, as the fans, get to see. And that when we get to see, wow, I'm just doing the math in my head, about 8 hours of coverage every 2 weeks. If you watch all of the qualifying, all of the practices, the race, the red button stuff, etc. But we don't see what happens once that door of the motorhome closes. And there could be a very different side to Nico Hülkenberg. It could all come down to the way that he gives out technical information to the team, the way that he appreciates, what happens to a car and offers advice for setups, or he could just have a really wonky setup driving style. Who knows? But
something does not sit right though. That is for sure. I don't know what it is, but something for sure does not sit right with top teams, team managers, and certain personnel with the character that Nico Hülkenberg is. And if he is going to the World Endurance Championship, I'm going to throw this out here now. And quite honestly, that championship is growing in stature so much because not only do you have the young talent coming through, they've opted to go down the sports car route rather than the open wheel route. You also have drivers that have gone there that are experienced and can easily do long distance races, and you've got these quick guys coming across from Formula One. The World Endurance Championship, and you probably say the Cheetah United Sports Car Championship, which will have its change in 2016, I think it is. Both series are really, really going to start to grow, and it would not surprise me at all if in 2016 the World Endurance Championships calendar has grown.
Yes, and I think WEC. I mean, it's had its heyday a couple of times. I've been thinking about the way that sports kind of evolve. And again, as an IndyCar fan, our heyday was really late 80s till 1995. Then we had a couple of years when kart was still really big. No one cared about the IRL. And then it just imploded on its head when the Bridgestone Presents a Champ Car World Series powered by Ford started. Rallying.
I love that series, by the way.
What, the Bridgestone Presents a Champ Car World Series powered by Ford?
Yeah.
Yes. The most.
It was the shittest name.
Yeah.
I always loved the championship. I know Bourdais pretty much blitzed it all, every weekend. But I don't know. There was something about Champ Car I just loved. I just loved watching Champ Car and the oh god, what was it was the final Panos car, wasn't it?
Yes.
EPO1.
Yes.
What a car that was.
That was amazing, to be fair. And I think what they did as well is they actually had racing which was fun, and they didn't have stupid technical regs, and the racing was good, and the drivers were good, the teams were good. You're right. WRC, of course, it had its heyday in the mid 90s. You could argue was its big heyday, and then that fell off. BTCC, early 90s, had its heyday. WEC's had it before, and it's always swings and roundabouts on these things. A lot of what we classify as big sports at the moment are in decline. Things like MotoGP, less people are watching it at the moment. You have a look at NASCAR, well, that's a lot less people are watching that at the moment. Formula One ratings are going down. Now, these people don't stop being motorsports fans. They are just dissatisfied with the product that is being presented by a certain series, so they will go and watch something else.
Also, everything is cyclical.
Yes.
Everything comes around in cycles, and everything will have its moments.
Yes.
F1 has kept its moments, even through its bad moments, such as not being able to pass and Schumacher winning everything. People still tuned in to watch, and there was a stat released the other day where a 2004 race was higher spectated than some of the current F1 races now. That's shocking considering what we actually see in F1 now.
It is.
But again, there is a strong belief that the rules makers are looking at this the entirely wrong way.
Yes.
Firstly, okay, I've not really got a problem with KERS and ERS and turbos. That doesn't really bother me. All right, we'll lose the sounds, you lose the atmospherics behind it, but let's be honest, it's the first year of it. It will evolve. It will get better.
Yeah.
We all know that. But that will improve with time. But when you start pissing about with things like DRS and these stupid-looking wings, which, by the way, even all these years down the line, they still look stupid since, 2009?
Well, I say 2001, let's be honest. That's when you first got the stupid wings, because you had the Benetton had the rounded one.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And then you had
enough.
the Walrus wing as well. Then you had the Benetton step wing. And you had different ones. Some of them were really nice. In fact, the Ferrari front end was amazing. But then you had, I think it was Jordan especially, who had that stepped wing, which that was just a butt ugly.
Yeah, as soon as aerodynamics are taken over, and that is half the problem. That is essentially the battle. Aerodynamics have taken over, and they need to reel back in these aerodynamics that, quite honestly, if they want to make these cars road relevant, as I keep bloody going on about all the time, where does an aerodynamic Formula 1 car fit into a road car? Yes, aero will make a difference because obviously it's more fuel efficient, granted. But where does these fat big wings actually make any significant difference in a road car? It doesn't.
No.
At all. That's why, in fact, why sports cars are probably 10 times more relevant than a Formula 1 car is, and probably always will be, to be fair. It's the actual engine technology and probably the tyre technology. Therefore, they have to really seriously consider what to do with mechanical grip over aerodynamic grip. You give the mechanical grip back, you take away the aero grip, and you've got a good formula again.
Yeah.
You throw all the engine stuff that you want at them. You give them turbos, you give them ERS, you give them KERS, you give them whatever they damn well want for an engine.
And a PlayStation wheel that you have to hit all the buttons in sequence, like you played Street Fighter back in the 90s.
Oh, it's what was it? Up, down, left, right.
Yeah.
A, B, C, and then you
Y-
got
y-
Sonic's
Yeah, I was about to
Sonic.
say that's the Sonic One
Oh hell yeah,
cheat screen. And it was, by the
exactly.
way, to prove how geeky I am, for Sonic 2, it's 1964 917 on the little code thing you had to do. I can't remember the Sonic 3 one was the one that was actually impossible because you had to do like 14 button presses in the Sega thing, which was absolutely impossible unless you had one of those turbo controllers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was impressive. But yeah, so I really don't know how that's going to work. But they've got to do something about this mechanical versus aero. I don't see a massive change for next year because I think the regs have already been released and the cars will have the changes to the nose. But going forwards, 16, 17 onwards, I think we will start to see a change, and hopefully this technical working group will pull their head out their ass and actually realise, yeah, okay, let's go do the mechanical side of it again.
Yeah.
And stop worrying so much about aero and pushing the tyres into the ground so that they actually want to explode on themselves, and we get these stupid hard compounds that someone like Andre Lotter comes in and says, well, a sports car's better than an F1 car.
Well, yeah. And again, you've got two things here. You have racing. You have people who watch racing because it's racing. You will get people who watch racing because of the technical amazement of it. Now, Le Mans, for me, the World Endurance Series, Le Mans is the absolute pinnacle of technology. And yes, you might get an Audi winning and dominating, but your mouth is just dropped to the floor at how they can make a car fit within these really tight regulations but have such enhanced technology. Formula One, I think the thing with Formula One is because you're getting it every single race, it's not as special. Now, yes, of course, they do run more than just Le Mans, but I think people generally watch Le Mans and then just flicking in out of other races in that series. The same for Tudor. Tudor's all about. Let's see whether this is going to work. We do apologise for that. I have no idea what happened. It just cut off. But as I was saying, people watch motorsport for two reasons: either the technical amazement of it or the driving. Now, the Tudor Sports Car Series is about racing. WEC is a mixture of racing and technical enhancements, and the two work. That you've not got two competing series in some ways there. IndyCar, it's about the racing. Technology, not so much. NASCAR, I mean, they're still stuck in 1980s, really, as far as technological enhancements go. Especially when you have a look at
NASCAR seem a bit lost, if I'm honest.
Oh yeah, they are completely lost, and they've made some rule changes. They actually taken away horsepower. When I mean, if you want to do it properly, add on horsepower, take away aero grip. Simple as that.
Yeah.
But Formula One, you're right. They are trying too hard to make themselves relevant in a technical sense. There is a reason why, because the engine manufacturers got a bit bored of spending hundreds of millions of pounds on something that couldn't be translated at all. I can appreciate that, but there needs to be a balance, and I don't think F1 has found that balance, and I don't think F1 will find that balance, unfortunately, while Jean Todt is still the head of the FIA.
Very conservative, isn't he? But he's French, so that makes sense. Yeah, I don't really think Jean Tot's doing much to the FIA at the moment. I think that's an entire another story that needs to unfold itself because he's got enough on his plate trying to sort WRC out more than anything.
Well, yes.
Which still has its major issues. Motorsport's in a state of flux at the moment. I think it's going through a huge transition, and I don't mean just Formula One. I mean it across the board. The GT3 regs, for example, I don't want to go into too much detail here, but the GT3 regs still aren't sorted out. But supposedly, United Sports Cars have actually settled on something for 2016, which will remove GTE and means that that GT3 will come in proper. Brilliant! Finally, that's taken long enough to do. But yeah, I think there is such a large amount of stuff going on at the moment across Formula One, across IndyCar, across the WEC. There is so much flux and transition that is happening in motorsport, and the way it's perceived and the way it's gone about to keep the entertainment value up. I think the biggest problem for me that I've noticed is that for some reason Formula One has chased new fans rather than stuck with the old and trusted and let new fans come to them. And I think that's been a big mistake.
Yes, I think it is a mistake, and I think this is where Formula E enters that conversation again. In that Formula E it is all about technology. And
Yeah,
you are
but,
looking at it for the technology, but at the same time, you have a formula that works, with the exception of that whole Twitter thing, which I think is complete and utter bullshit, that works for racing.
uh, it's a, I would say it's a clever idea, but it's kind of not at the same time. It's neither here nor there. It's kind of like, well, why sort of thing.
What's
Is
the
it
point?
needed?
The same way
What's
that
the point?
A1GP was. What was the point of A1GP? We have a World Cup. We see it every 4 years. And unless you're going to have a penalty shootout for England to lose against, it's not relevant to us.
Yeah, I mean, there's a classic saying of if it's not broken, then why fix it, sort of thing.
Yeah.
F1 in some respects was pretty broken though, because they did need to do something about the regs back in the aero regs in particular around about 2006 time. They needed to sort it out really. And then they decided to throw new qualifying sessions and tyres and all that nonsense. Again, the biggest problem was aero.
Yeah.
But yet no one seems to believe that. It's probably because Adrian Yu threw his toys out the pram.
No, he didn't throw his toys out the pram. He threw his toys into a boat and he sent it into the America's Cup. Get it right.
That is true, actually. That's exactly what he's going to turn. He probably turns to Pirates of the Caribbean soon.
Yeah.
But yeah. But, okay. We all know that motorsport is in a state of flux. Therefore, let's talk about Packers and Vikings.
I was going to say, before we finish off, just one final point about relevance. The one reason why IndyCar survived was because it had something relevant every Memorial Day weekend, and that was the Indy 500. When you talk about relevance, that is one of those things that you always bear in mind. And if you didn't have the Indy 500, IndyCar would have folded years ago. So you have got to stay true to your roots. And IndyCar, of all of the series which has been so freaking useless when it comes to regs the last 10 years, what are they trying to do? They want to break the speed record at the Indy 500, and they want to do it properly. And they've got a long-term plan to get to that thing, to make IndyCar the fastest sport in the world again. That's actually the one time I've actually seen a series involving open wheels do something relevant and useful.
Yeah, but the amazing thing is that even through that, they're still attracting engine manufacturers, aren't they? They're actually attracting people, like engine manufacturers, to the sport.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, if they're considering the fact that everyone wants to go to 2-litre turbos, and that's literally what it will end up, by the way. Everything will be 2-litre turbos, including my own Audi A3. Thank you very much.
My boss drives an Audi A3.
There you go. Then, to be quite honest with you, to see a sport like that, it's going to have some serious appeal about it, and you will get the viewership going up, I would have thought.
I agree. Now, Packers Vikings.
Well, I said it to you pre-show, mate. If a team ever wanted to make Aaron Rodgers look good, it was the Vikings.
Mm-hmm. And
I mean, how can you throw that many incompletions, firstly, but then also, to actually throw to the opposition basically for fun?
2 words: Teddy Bridgewater. Of course, he was injured for the game. And you go back a week previous, Teddy Bridgewater, his first game in the NFL, was outstandingly good. Then he got himself injured. It was a short week. And this all comes back to that argument why Thursday Night Football exists. Because on a short week, it means that you've not got time. If you think about it, Monday night is always rest day. Then you've got 2 days to figure out, my quarterback is injured. How am I going to move forward? And they actually thought that Bridgewater was going to play. It was only about an hour before the game that they said he wasn't. So they were going to, they said that they were going to run the same reps that Bridgewater was going to run. But the issue is when you're running a third string quarterback, you basically just have a running game. Let's be honest.
Well, it goes back to what we said the other week before as well about Tim Tebow. It's the same principle.
Yeah. So the issue for the Vikings is they tried playing as if Bridgewater was on the field, but he wasn't on the field. And in replacement of that, the amount of INTs and incompletions was just hilarious. You're right. And, I mean, Aaron Rodgers isn't having a great season. But all of a sudden, you're right, the Packers looked good. And anyone who was watching the NFL for the first time on Thursday night Actually, they're probably looking through TV on CBS to try and find the Big Bang Theory because they haven't got all the memos. Turned it on, they would have become a Packers fan immediately.
Oh, for sure. Now Aaron Rodgers is probably, he's probably packed his bags for the Pro Bowl already.
Yeah, true story. He's still got a long way to go. I mean, the Packers are having to say they're having a good season would just be a lie. Let's be honest; they are still having a shocking season. But
that's the thing; they didn't even actually play that well.
No, they didn't.
They really didn't play that well.
But they're 3-2.
And yet it was 42-10.
Yeah. And one of the issues is that, unfortunately, pretty much every single Thursday night football game this season has been a blowout. And we'll come on to next Thursday night football's game, because you and I might end up in a bit of an argument later on. But, yeah, the Packers did a good thing. And, of course, we've got a pretty good slate coming up in, 2 hours? Starting with Bears at Panthers. Now, let's be honest, you're a Bears fan. If you don't win this, I'm going to laugh at you.
If we don't win this, then I will let you laugh at me, because quite honestly, if that doesn't happen, then there's something seriously wrong.
Yeah.
But then again, that would be a common theme with our season, to look amazing in one game and then look very, very below average the next.
Yes. I mean, of course, Cam Newton and the Panthers, there will be a time when they actually start managing to play some football again. They are 2-2 on the season at the moment. They're not having a great season at all. And the game's on Fox. But Browns-Titans. Now, a 1-2 Cleveland Browns versus a 1-3 Tennessee Titans. I'm not sure if you saw anything of when the Colts played the Titans, but it looked academic at best.
Yeah. Well, Titans for a few years have been very average, really, haven't they? They've not really done anything for a while. But then the Browns,
could be a game to get Manziel to do a couple of reps.
Yeah, well, yeah. Browns possibly something there. If the Browns were a Premier League team, they'd be ultimate mid-table team. They're Everton.
I was going to say they're Everton or Aston Villa in that kind of category.
Yeah.
Because
the two kids get relegated, but they're not good enough to challenge for the Champions League.
No, definitely not. And in fact, arguably, you could say that about most of the city of Cleveland's teams. Unfortunately, of course, now you've got what's his face back at Cleveland, LeBron. Then it's a little bit better, but yeah, it's a bit of a weird one as far as that goes. And I think that Cleveland, they can be good. They can be great. But, yeah, who knows?
I just see that being a dull game.
It will be a dull game. Actually, I'll bring up my map, because I've got a map of all the games and who's going to get the coverage. I think they're basically just going to be shown in their markets, and that's it. Rams, Eagles. Eagles are going to win. Shall we move on to Falcons, Giants? Because that's actually going to be an interesting game.
How the Eagles lost, by the way, last weekend, I'll never know. But Eagles, Rams, yes, that will be an Eagles win. Falcons, Giants. Giants, did they wake up finally? Something happened. Yeah. But I don't actually see that being as tight as you think. I think Falcons will quite comprehensively win that.
I'm not entirely sure. Of course, this is October, so Eli Manning knows how to play football in October. It's November.
Oh yeah,
he starts.
I was going to say there's still one more month, isn't there?
Yes, it's still a month until Eli Manning runs out of reps. But I think it's weird for the Falcons because again they've got a very good team about them, but they are again a team who proverbially choke every so often. They're both 2-2, and I think it is a key game for both. You're playing it at the Meadowlands, and maybe, just maybe, a New York crowd might actually help them out for once.
You'd hope so, but like I said, I still stick by it. I still think the Falcons have got that.
Okay. And just to let you know, by the way, Cleveland, Tennessee is basically just being shown in their home market. It's a C game, so no one cares about it. Bucks at Saints. Bucks at Saints. Saints, surely.
Well, Bucks did turn it around. Yeah, I'd probably say the Saints, to be fair. I'll be surprised if the Bucks do anything against them, put it like that.
Now, this is a game which, for the first time in a while, actually is not only relevant, it's exciting. Texans Cowboys at Jerry's World could be amazing. It could be tedious and boring. We could have a 100-point game. We could have a 20-point game.
I think it's going to be horribly mediocre with neither team wanting to lose, but the Texans winning.
Okay. I mean, of course, the Texans have got J.J. Watt, so you have someone to repeatedly intercept and sack Tony Romo. But the Cowboys' defense is actually not mediocre anymore.
Just one step above mediocre. Probably take the E off.
Yeah.
Mediocre.
Mediocre.
Mediocre. But no, still Texans for me. I don't see the Cowboys doing anything for a while yet. Still.
All right. Well, they are the game of the week on CBS this week, which is going to be interesting. It's like it could be a great game, and I think that whole thing though. What do you call a great game? Is what do you call a great race? What most people will call a great game will be a 45-44 kind of game, but that's not actually going to be a great game overall because it's just going to be so hilarious with wide open coverage all over the place.
I'm actually quite surprised that's the game of the week, but I can also understand why it is at the same time. Because we'll come to it in a minute, and I'll tell you what I think is the game of the week.
All right. Bills Lions. Now, the Bills have made a change at quarterback, and I think it's Carl Orton who's going to be now their quarterback. Detroit Lions still got Megatron. They're 3-1. The Bills are 2-2. The Bills, I've rated them for much of the season, but they got to start winning games. It also looks as though it's going to be a kind of cloudy, wettish, upsettingly bad game. It's not going to be high scoring, and I think if you're Kyle Orton, you've just got to protect yourself in the pocket. Simple as that.
I thought this season Lions were going to have a really strong defense, and they really haven't yet.
And they build themselves on defense. I mean, they're probably the second best well-known defense after the Seahawks traditionally.
Well, I'd agree with that, but I see this being a very low-scoring game also, and I see it being I see a lot being played in the midfield. I see it all being played in and around the centre, and I do not see much going either end. So,
field goals, not much in the red zone.
No, I think it's going to be quite a stale game, that, for me. Yeah. So, I think the Lions will just edge it, though. Okay.
I think I'm going to agree with you. I think Kyle Orton under pressure is going to be an interesting one. And again, the thing is, pretty much essentially 3 teams in New York, if you're going to think about it properly. None of them is having a good season. The Bills looking as though they could be the best in that. And they could actually be heading to the playoffs with a losing season record. I mean, they could very easily be under 500 for the season and still make playoffs because the entire division that they play in is just pathetic at the moment.
Well, yeah. That'd be a record if it happens, surely.
Well, it depends on how Bo is. I think they'll probably end up going 7-9. If they go 6-10 and make the playoffs, then I'll just laugh. Ravens Colts at Lucas Oil. If Andrew Luck can remember to play 4 quarters worth of football, this should be a Colts game. But if Andrew Luck doesn't know how to play 4 quarters worth of football, the Ravens are going to win.
I still think Colts will win that. Ravens.
They are 3-1.
No, they are 3-1. Yes, but
that's like saying that Alabama was 3-0 at the start of the season when they were playing teams that no one has ever heard of.
Well, exactly. That's like saying one of the top teams, like, I don't know. That's comparison to football again. A top team like Chelsea playing the first 4 games of the season, winning 3, drawing 1, but playing very averagely. And that's how I feel about the Ravens. They are winning, but it's it's very unconvincing. They're just very mediocre. They're very average. There's not a lot of conviction there with the Ravens.
As far as the numbers go, the Ravens got the sixth best offense in the league. The Colts got the second best. But then defense, the Ravens got the 13th best defense. The Colts are 19th best. I think that Andrew Luck needs to get a very good running game started early and work third down, short, get himself into third and short passing situations. Because then he can do good old Peyton Manning style, 3rd and 2, easy, get myself into the pocket, throw a 3-yard pass, move the chains, and do that. He doesn't need to do big plays. He does need to rely on Bradshaw and on Richardson to really work together to try and tire out that Ravens defense at the start. Come to the second half, unleash Luck, get him throwing that football, get Wayne into the end zone. That's a chance they have to win that game.
I agree.
There we are.
I couldn't agree more with that one on Colts.
Steelers Jags. ESPN have the Jags winning this, by the way.
Why?
Because the Steelers are still doing so bad.
Yeah, I know, but the Steelers, they can't be doing bad enough. Actually, I'll take that back.
You've got Blake Bortles as a starting QB now for the Jags. Which Bortles, let's not forget, number 1 quarterback draft pick in the NFL, drafted 3rd overall. I haven't got anyone to him to throw to, but
no. Surely the Steelers are going to win that. Surely
it'll be a low-scoring game, and I think
it'll be fucking touchdown in it, and that's it.
Yeah. I'm just having a look at the stats of the Jags. 31st in offense, 32nd in defense, 24th in passing. The Steelers are going to win this, aren't they?
God, I hope so.
Right.
That's shocking.
Then we come to what I think is going to be potentially this year's Super Bowl.
I think this could also be the Super Bowl, and I also think this is Game of the Week.
Cards at Broncos could very easily be a preview of what we will see in Super Bowl 49. 3-0 Cardinals, 2-1 Broncos. And let's not forget that one for the Broncos was OT, and it was actually a great fourth quarter from Peyton Manning. The Cards, well, I've got nothing but good to say about them at the moment. Although their offense isn't that good, their defense is bloody amazing. And it's that classic thing. The same way that if you can stop the running game for certain teams, if you can provide good man-to-man coverage on Peyton Manning, you can make his life a misery. That is what the Cardinals need to do today.
Yes, the Cardinals basically need to play like the Seahawks did in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And they will win. And quite honestly, I think they will win because after watching Broncos Seahawks a couple of weeks ago, I still was not convinced by the Broncos. They only decided to turn it on in the fourth quarter. And if the Cards come out fighting straight away, I think there will be some big points on the boards before the Broncos can do anything about it.
Yeah. And the thing with the Cardinals is you can't very easily come back from 21 points down against them. It is a mile high. Of course, if these two do meet again, then it's actually going to be at University of Phoenix Stadium. So it's a game that the Cards can afford to lose. It's a game that Denver really has to win.
Yeah, you see, that's the thing for the Cards. They're in like a no-lose situation. They can afford to win it, but they can afford to lose it, but if they do win it, it will give them so much confidence.
Yeah.
So I don't actually think the Cardinals are in a lose situation here because the Broncos, it's a needs must. So for me, I still think this is Game of the Week, and I think because of that, Cardinals will play with a much relaxed game.
I do agree. Kansas City, San Francisco. 2-2, each of them. Both of them are playing nowhere near as good as what they did this time last year. Do I need to say much more?
49ers should be playing so much better than what they are. They're so much better. The Chiefs'
defense last year was phenomenal. Andy Reid did some amazing things with the Chiefs last year. It seems to be the same way that when Andy Reid went to Philadelphia, he was great for a season, And then he ran out of any form of inventiveness. He pretty much like, okay, that was a good season. Let's refresh that playbook and run it again for the next 4 years.
Yeah, and I can't honestly. 49ers for me.
49ers, I'm going to go with the Chiefs. Jets, Chargers.
Okay.
Chargers. Yeah, moving on, because Chargers are, they're in my picture for at least making the wild card. Bengals, Patriots, Sunday Night Football on NBC. Bengals.
This will be a good game.
It's possibly the most important game Tom Brady has played in 4 years.
This is how we were just saying before about the Broncos needing to win. Patriots need to win this.
Yes.
And the Bengals, I just think they can go about their business, and I think the Bengals will probably win.
Yeah. Even though it is at Gillette and you are going to have a Patriots crowd, this Patriots crowd are frustrated. So if Patriots go 3 and out on their first possession, you're not going to have a crowd. It'll basically like playing in a neutral facility. So I think that the Patriots have got to go incredibly hard early. And it's that sort of thing that they need to go and get themselves a touchdown on that first play. They have got to rely on their hard hitters. And the Bengals, all they've got to do is not concede more than 14 points in the first quarter.
Yep.
There we are.
Absolutely. And I honestly, I don't see it happening. I just think the Bengals have got this for some reason. When I saw this week's fixtures, because I was a little bit late to the party on checking it out. Honestly, it's just how I feel. I think the Bengals have got this.
Yeah. And then finally, Monday Night Football, we have Seahawks versus the Redskins. Apologies to anyone who might be offended by me using the Redskins, a name which they've had for all of these years. ESPN must get a little bit peed off sometimes when they get their games in April. They haven't got flexible scheduling procedures in play, and they have to deal with basically one-sided games like this.
Yeah. You've got to feel sorry for ESPN, haven't you? But, I mean, this could be embarrassing. You know, I reckon Seahawks going to destroy them.
Yeah, I'm actually having a look through the schedule. Next week's Monday Night Football is 49ers at Rams. That is going to be boring. Then Texans at Steelers. That's going to be a walkover for the Texans. Then we're into Week 8 and Redskins at Cowboys. That's going to be an easy Cowboys win. Week 9, we go Colts Giants. That's the next decent game ESPN's going to have. And of course, the Colts can't play on Monday night, so the Giants are going to win that one.
Well, no, because are you into November then?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, November, so it's going to be...
So Eli Manning's not going to turn up.
Yeah, Eli Manning can't play. The Colts can't play on Monday night. You might as well just call it basically a 3-all draw.
You may as well put a repeat of the Indy 500 on.
You might as well, to be fair. And then, I mean, Panthers-Eagles, that will be okay. Eagles, very good on Monday night, especially at home. Titans-Steelers, pathetic. I do feel bad. I mean, Ravens-Saints, both of them are playing really badly this season. Dolphins-Jets will be moderately entertaining.
It's just...
Falcons-Packers. Falcons-Packers actually will be a good game. But that's December 8th.
Yes. Oh my god. I think someone needs to walk up and give ESPN a hug.
Yeah, they do. And even for the rest of the season, of course, I don't get games on Week 17. Week 15's game is bad. And then Week 16, Broncos-Bengals actually be an okay game. And this is one of those things with scheduling in the NFL. And it takes me all the way back to Monday Night Football. ESPN really have done themselves more harm than good ever since they put it on ESPN and taken it away from ABC. Yes, that was 8 years ago now, but... Sunday Night Football, they've got flexible scheduling, and the flex scheduling rules have changed. Actually, you can flex games onto Sunday night now, at this stage of the season. And you can flex games between the early and the late slot now, at this stage of the season. You can't do that on Thursday night, but Thursday night are divisional games for very good reason. And Monday night, they're scheduled designed in April. Now, there have been some years when ESPN have had some great matchups week after week. And of course, It had possibly the most controversial moment in NFL history in the last 10 years, a couple of years back. But even when they had the doubleheader, it wasn't that good. Chargers Cardinals, I think that was the only one that was entertaining.
Pretty much.
Yeah. And that sums up our thing.
I think that pretty much sums it up perfectly, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah. Now, college football. Do I have to explain that to you now?
Yes. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if everyone wanted an education, you're about to get it. Because if you ever, because I started to investigate and research and look into college football in America because I think the whole scholarship system, the way that high school works, it's fascinating. It's something that we in England in particular do not get across any sports. You actually get offered scholarships, but it's not the same way.
No.
And I started to look into it. I started asking a question. I put that out there on Facebook, put it on Twitter. I got some American friends that replied that Mr. Will Vincent was the man that came up trumps with basically all the info you needed to know. So, Will Vincent explained to us college football, and not only that, which are the good teams, stroke divisions, stroke conferences.
Right, this is going to be a little bit complicated. I do apologise. College football, basically, we need to start by remembering this is America. And pretty much every college has an American football team. Now, they rank them in two ways. First of all, you've got the FBS teams, which are the Football Bowl subdivision. Then you've got the FCS teams, which are the Football Championship division. Now, the differences between these, it really does come down to attendance is, I think, the big one. So you've got to have more than 15,000 fans at games over the course of a 2-year period to become an FBS team, which makes you bowl eligible, which means that you can play in some of the really big historic games like the Rose Bowl, the Citrus Bowl, and essentially come into the the playoff system for 2014, because they actually now have got a what's the word I'm looking for? A playoff system for the first time ever in college football in the FBS. Understand me so far?
I'm following.
Okay, so once you get into that, you then have divisions 1, 2, and 3, which again, basically you just rank your teams based upon how good they are. The big things that you need to worry about, really, your Division 1 teams, and you've got yourself a number of conferences within that, and that is based upon location. With me?
Yep.
So you've got, if I'm right, 11 conferences.
Can I just stop you very quickly there?
Yep.
Now, FBS, when you search it, for me, comes up as independents and only 4 teams, being Notre Dame, BYU, Army, and Navy.
Right. Okay. Notre Dame is special. Notre Dame, basically, they couldn't join any of the conferences back in the day because they're a Catholic university, and there's religion, basically, back then. Then Notre Dame became huge, and basically it was like, can you become part of our conference? Please, we'll let you become part of our conference. What they actually did instead was they negotiated a TV contract with NBC. They're the only team in the country to have their own TV contract. So all of their games, when they're playing at home, are on NBC, which is huge. I mean, basically, they're the most financially stable college in the entirety of the US because of the fact that they've got that one TV contract. But for this year, what they've done is they're not part of a conference, but to make scheduling easier, and Notre Dame's issue always was, is that one of the ways that they used to do all these polls, etc., was what is your strength of schedule, which, of course, you know from the NFL, they don't schedule games in such a way that everyone plays everyone, so you have to take into account strength of schedule for things like ranking players. Still with me?
Right, okay.
Right.
I understand that we're Notre Dame. So, what about BYU? Who are they?
They're a faith school again, essentially.
Faith school, right, okay.
Yeah, same thing.
And I'm guessing the Army and Navy are independent because they are literally the Army and the Navy.
Yes. Well, the Air Force are actually part of a conference. The thing is that Army and Navy, one of the things of college football is it brings a lot of money into your college. The Army and the Navy don't need that money because the government will fund essential sports stuff, if that makes sense. So what's the point of them being in a conference when their main aim out of that would be to get a share of revenue from TV contracts within that conference, when actually they don't need to?
Right.
Got ya.
Okay.
Then you come down to another 10 conferences around the country, so they're geographically located. If
Right.
you've got more than 12 teams in your conference, you can split your conference in half. So, for example, the SEC, the Southeastern Conference, they have the East and the West. Still got me?
Yes.
Okay. The only ones that you need to
By the
actually
way,
pay
I'm
attention to.
I'm actually looking at this at the same time on things like Wikipedia, so I'm keeping track.
Okay, so the only ones that you really need to pay attention to are, at this stage, the Pac-12, because they've got Oregon, and they're pretty good because of that. And the Pac-12, they're always one of those that they've got some very good teams, and sometimes they've not got some good teams. They've got Oregon. Oregon, the team, by the way, I'm sure you've seen it before, they have a new kit every single time they play. So they completely change all their colours. It's crazy. And also you've got Stanford University, which is where Andrew Luck comes from.
Okay, yeah.
Yep. So they're the ones that you... And USC Trojans as well. They can be pretty good in the Pac-12. Then you've got the ACC, the Atlantic Coast Conference. Now, the big one in there is you've got Florida, who are currently ranked #1 in the country. You've got a couple of other people in there. So Florida State, they are the #1 team in the country. Duke, more famous for their basketball than they are for their football, but they're ranked in there as well. And you've got Notre Dame, I say, they've got that deal with them, so they will play teams within them this year. But that doesn't necessarily mean that, of course, you're going to get them playing all of their teams. And then the big one, I will caveat this by saying the Big Ten and the Big 12, you do get some good teams within them. People like Oklahoma, for example, one of those things. Tennessee are kind of in that area. The big thing that you need to pay attention to is simply the SEC, which is recognised as almost being like the NFL of college football.
Which one was this, sorry?
The Southeastern Conference there.
The Southeastern Conference, right, okay.
Right. So now, when you're in the SEC, they've got 2 different divisions, and you've got some of the biggest games of the year. You've got some of the biggest teams of the year. Johnny Manziel from Texas A&M, of course you know him.
Yes.
Auburn University, they play a game every year against Alabama, which is called the Iron Bowl, which I'm sure you must have seen that one from last year.
I've seen it, yes. I know there's a certain someone on both our Facebooks that has plenty to say about it.
Yes. And then you've got a couple of other ones as well. So, Auburn are huge. Alabama are huge as far as that goes. Tennessee in the mix there as well. Georgia is a bit of a weird team that sometimes they're really good, other times they're not. But basically, that is how it works in really simple terms of the teams locationally. Got me?
Right. Got you.
So, then what happens is teams play each other over the course of the season. And then afterwards, you will have yourself a win-loss record. Now, if you have a winning record, then you will be invited. You've got to have won more than 6 games or 7 if you play Hawaii, because some teams play Hawaii and therefore they play an extra game as well. If you do that, then you become what we call bowl eligible, which means that you can play in bowl games. Now, you've got some really big ones, which again, the biggest and arguably most coveted of the bowl games, which doesn't form the national championship, is the Rose Bowl. And the Rose Bowl is played in Pasadena. It's an absolutely beautiful facility, and it's just amazing. And then you've got a couple of others, the Citrus One Bowl. By the way, you also get sponsorships coming here, so you've got things like the Capital One Bowl as well. And then you have what used to be is one of those would become the national championship game. And it used to be that you'd have rankings, so from #1 down to number 25. And you ever seen a college football game? You get the really small number next to them.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what's basically their ranking. So it's ranking is done by a big computer essentially, and it ranks the teams based upon all of these random factors like strength of field, win-loss record, etc. They put in votes as well from people like the Associated Press. Currently, it is #1. It is Florida State University, the Seminoles. #2, until arguably Thursday night, was Oregon, who you're watching on TV.
Yes.
Yes, they
I was
sucked.
watching it on ESPN.
Yes, UK.
Yeah, UK. Let's clarify that one.
Yes. But this has actually been one of the most crazy weeks in college football history because of the fact that so many of the top ranked teams have actually lost. Now, the second place team has lost, the third place team has lost, the fourth place team has lost, the sixth place team has lost. The fifth place team are Auburn, they're just fucking amazing, and of course they naturally won. Got me?
Right. Yes.
So then we come over to playoffs. What it used to be.
So these
rankings.
These bowls are not finals as such.
No, the way it worked until this year, there was no official championship game. There was the unofficial BCS, the Bowl Championship Series game. But that wasn't sanctioned by the NCAA, who basically run college football. It was unofficial. This is the first time that you have what we've got to call an official championship. And the way that bowls used to work is that your number 1 and your number 2 teams would basically play in the BCS National Championship game. And you play basically your regular season. Because you'd had a winning record, you play in bowl games. But it wasn't the sort of thing that if you win bowl games, it'd be like a playoff system and you'd end up in the championship final. Actually, you could play your bowl game and then the rankings say, well, you're number 3, you're not playing. That makes sense.
Right, okay, but this year that's changed in the fact that you do actually get, like, what I guess will be, like, is it a playoff series?
It's a 14 playoff. We're starting nice and simple. We are starting simple here. And it basically is a group of people who will decide who those top 4 teams are, in the same way as we do at the moment with the AP rankings. The most controversial person on this was Condoleezza Rice, so I'm sure you only remember her as a politician.
Yes.
Yes, she's on the panel, apparently.
There's so much logic behind that one.
Yes.
Okay.
But what they'll do is they'll pick 4 teams, and then basically they play a playoff-style system, and then you get a champion. And that's the way college football works. I mean, it is not without its flaws. And I watch college football more.
It seems too much like people decide who's good and who's not to me, rather than actually who is good as such.
Well, part of the issue of college football is that you play conference games, so you'll play people within the SEC, for example, and then you play out-of-conference games. Some of these out-of-conference games, you almost have to get the mercy rule into effect, because these are 70-0 blowouts.
Right, okay.
But it's the way it's scheduling the way it works. And at the end of the day, you have got to play a lot of people. And because it's so big, again, that some of the powerhouse teams will play some of the really bad teams. And if you ever get the chance, watch 2007, I think it is, Michigan versus Appalachian State, which is basically the biggest upset in college football history, in that you had an unranked team going to Michigan, who is their number 1 of the country, arguably, in their powerhouse phase, and they got beaten by basically nobodies.
Wow.
Yeah. Any more questions, or shall we do a part 2 next week?
Yeah, let's do a part 2 next week. That sounds good to me.
Because we can do that, and about how we're going to the draft. How long have we been on?
Oh, okay. Let's throw out one more question to you.
All right.
Do you have a favourite or a particular college team?
Yes.
And who might?
Well, I've got a couple, actually. Auburn. The reason why Auburn is because my UK university has a relationship with Auburn, which has been going on for a couple of years. And basically, we send students out there to placement during college football season. And some of our lecturers go over there as well. I'm actually hoping to go over next year. So Auburn for that one. Of course, me and my Indiana roots, I always check to see how Notre Dame are doing. And I always check to see how Indiana University are doing, IU, the Hoosiers. But it's very rare that you'd actually get Auburn playing any of these people. IU are basically shit. And Notre Dame, of course, are good. But I have my issues with them. Just because they're an Indiana team, I'll be nice to them, if that makes any sense.
Okay.
And Stanford, in the Pac-12, I'll always keep an eye out for Stanford, because, of course, Andrew Luck and all that things going on there.
Okay, so being a Bears fan, and obviously Illinois, what college team do you recommend from that area? Are there any?
None. I say none, unless how disappointed do you want to be?
Oh, if they're a huge, shit underdog, like never going to win, I'll take it still.
Well, we'll find one out for you for next week. And in fact,
Excellent.
because Black Friday's coming up, I'll even buy you a jersey when I do my annual Black Friday sale.
That would be awesome.
There we are. We've got to wrap this up soon, but before we do, Gregor Huttu is now a 4-time iRacing.com world champion.
Yeah, we've completely forgotten about our sim racing roots here, but yes, Huttu is a 4-time world champion, and let's be honest, that is pretty damn phenomenal.
It is.
And hats off to him once again. There's not really much superlatives you can give the guy, but huge congratulations, and let's just hope for a new car more than anything.
Yes, DW12 for WCS. Before we go any further, I want to compare that to FSR, because although I am the proverbial and racing fanboy, FSR, how does Huttu's accomplishments translate?
Right, very difficult to call this one because iRacing has obviously moved on, and R Factor 1 was where FSR was based until this season.
Yes.
Up to this point, you would have, in the past few years, Bonnie Huis as dominant champion, absolutely superb, phenomenal really effort that he's put in, and he's done very, very well. Prior to that, when FSR was arguably at its highest, you had some fantastic drivers in there like Bruno Marquez, and very, very impressive. Now we've moved to R Factor 2. I say we. I've actually done a race on R Factor 2 in FSR. Good fun. It's a lot different to drive than R Factor 1, and that has really caught me out big time, especially with tyres. In terms of how this season's panning out between Moran and Huis against what Huttu has done, I think Huttu's built off consistency of what he knows, much like Huis has done with R Factor 1. Now that both Moran and Huis have been tested yet again with R Factor 2, then I think you can only match them on the accomplishments they already have. Therefore, I think Huis and Huttu are very, very closely matched.
Okay. So, of course, 4-time champion. And compare inside of iRacing. The NASCAR P-Canterbury Series powered by iRacing.com. Arguably the second most confusing title after the Bridgestone Presenter Champ Car World Series powered by Ford. You had Ray Alfaro, of course, winning 2 championships in that one. And then he struggled a bit last year. Still had an outside shot for the championship coming into Champions Week. He didn't win the title. It was Hudson who won that title. This year, Alfaro, again, he could win the title. It's going to require a bit of luck from him and Michael Conti to have some issues. And yes, the NASCAR depth of field is arguably on the very top 20% higher than what you see in the iRacing.com World Championship Grand Prix Series. So it does make it, again, difficult to translate. But
yes, but there is one big thing with that I personally think. iRacing still is really the only place to go for ovals.
Yes.
For open wheel cars and Formula cars, there is now at least 4 different places you can go.
Yes.
iRacing, R Factor 1, R Factor 2, and somewhat Assetto Corsa.
Yes.
Therefore, it can't really be translated. And based off that, I think that percentage you have in NASCAR, I think you do truly see who are the good oval drivers.
Yes.
Whereas with open formula, it's harder to call.
Oh yeah. I mean, Young O, for example, arguably is the most dominant guy to step into an IndyCar in racing situations. He won the 2011 iRacing.com, whatever they called it, IndyCar Premier Series. He's won Indy 500s officially. He's won 16th Street Racing League Championships. He's won ISWC, Indy 500s. I can carry on. But again, you then have to try and compare him to Gregor Huttu in the F1 series and everyone else. I think arguably what we're going to have to do, Nick, is get neutral territory, get everyone into some GT cars and project cars and find out who the real best driver is.
You will, but I doubt it'll happen anytime soon.
No.
I think the only real way it will happen is if iRacing can pick up the appeal of open wheel cars and sort out a new tyre model, or you have the marketability and the money in R Factor 2 that it attracts a team like Redline and Huttu.
Yeah, I think you've actually hit the nail on the head there. Don't forget, by the way, that 24 hours of Spa registrations are open. They'll be here on RaceSpotTV. You're looking forward to that, aren't you?
I am, yeah. I'm actually really looking forward to it. I've not done a race on iRacing in a while, so it's going to take a little bit of learning, getting used to it again. But that's going to be a tremendous challenge, that one, and to see how driver swaps and everything work as well. Yeah, I am. I'm looking forward to that.
It's that whole thing where we've had the idea for months now, and all of a sudden it's, oh my god, I've got to create all of this stuff. And 24-hour broadcast, I mean, I know our good friend, Mr. David Carr Smith, does some stuff on our factory for 24-hour races, but it's a lot different doing a 24-hour broadcast, even compared to a 6-hour GT broadcast.
Oh, yeah. Hugely different. And I mean, it's been 24 hours, but run on a much smaller scale and lesser scale. And this is where Virtual Endurance Championship took over yesterday, because they ran a pre-season, shall we call it?
Yeah.
On R Factor 2. That looked pretty good, to be fair. I think that looked like quite a good race, quite an enjoyable race. And they're going to be running some big races throughout the year. And now iRacing is essentially going to try and match them. And I honestly do. I think this will be the route that sim racing takes in the years to come.
Yeah, endurance racing. And of course, we've got some really good events that we've got planned up for the next couple of years. The 24 Hours of Daytona, of course, will be a huge one for us next year. And for me, the 24 Hours of Daytona, what it does for me more than anything else, it tells me that I can stop hibernating because motor racing is starting again.
Oh, yeah. I think that's the same for pretty much everyone, though, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes, you got the car rally beforehand, but as soon as you get to Daytona, you got Daytona, you got the 500, Grand Prix not very far away, IndyCar starting early, potentially next year.
Actually, there's a 24 hours as well.
Yes. You've got the one in Abu Dhabi, haven't you?
Dubai.
Yeah, Dubai, yeah, sorry.
24 hours of Dubai, yeah.
I'm sure I'm going to get kidnapped now because I've just confused two Islamic countries. But yeah, you've got those two races. I've put myself right. Yes, those two really do kick off what we call the motor racing season. Of course, Super Bowl's around that time. We stop caring about football. Well, except for you, because you care about that diving soccer crap. And then we carry on from there. And as well, Nordschleife. We've talked about that, of course, last week. That will make great endurance racing. And overall, I think, to go back, let's go full circle. When we think about it, you consider the fact that you are paying £200-300 to go to a Grand Prix. That money, you, me, a couple of other people, you can get ourselves into a car, get some tents, go to Le Mans, or go to the Nordschleife, watch a 24-hour race, get ourselves steamingly drunk if we wanted to, camp out, not have to worry about health and safety with our little disposable barbecues. We can have a real barbecue and a real fridge and everything, have the time of our lives, and still have change in what an F1 ticket would be.
Oh, yeah. I mean, once again, showing that sports cars, endurance, whatever you want, seems to be the way forwards.
And on that note,
probably will be the way forwards for a while.
I think it really will be. Unless, of course, they start ramping up ticket prices to £400 a go. In which case, I wouldn't be a happy bunny. I think that's the eloquent place to really end this week.
I agree.
Now, are we going to do one tomorrow, or what are we going to do?
Let's try and do one tomorrow.
Let's try. Well, the aim is to do these on Monday nights. Of course, we'll have plenty of stuff to talk about from Formula 1. If we do get any updates on Jules Bianchi, then we'll get that. We'll also have a bit more of an in-depth look at what's coming up, because, of course, Nick, we're only short time away from Russia. That's, of course, if everyone can get out of Japan in time.
Yep, and sure enough, we'll have a review of the Sunday night NFL games as well.
Yep, on NBC. And until that, ladies and gentlemen, we will talk to you all next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.